Well, good afternoon to you. 506 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. You can join us today at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. A hearing in Congress today discussing the impeachment of DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas for the disaster that he has wrought upon the country by opening our borders. Democrats say all he's doing is carrying out Biden's policies. Okay, fine, impeach him too. Meanwhile, attorneys general from across the country all testified before Congress today that the suffering that they're experiencing in their states is a direct result of Alejandro Mayorkas' leadership of the Department of, again, Homeland Security. For more on this issue, and I want to bring in a guy who knows all about this subject, the president of the National Border Patrol Council, Brandon Judd, joins us on the phone. Sir, great to have you back with us. Thank you.
Good to be with you, Vince. Thank you.
The Democrats today are arguing that Mayorkas is not guilty of any high crimes or misdemeanors and therefore should not be impeached. Do you agree?
No, absolutely not. And we can't know that until all of the hearings are through. I mean, there's going to be a series of hearings. But what this is going to do, and what I'm very, very happy about, is this is going to shed a light on everything that is going on. Congress is going to have subpoena power. They're going to be able to get all of the information. The public is going to know about what's going on. My biggest frustration is every single time that you hear Mayorkas talk, he only gives part of the information. He doesn't give the public everything. We talk about democracy being under attack. I believe that the biggest attack on democracy is when government officials like Secretary Mayorkas do not give the American public all the information that they need to be able to make an informed decision. That's what democracy is about, being able to make a decision based upon all of the facts, all of the information. And he constantly withholds a majority of the facts so that the American people cannot make that decision.
In fact, let me play an example of this, because what Brandon Judd is saying is totally right. And if you listen to any interview with Alejandro Mayorkas, you detect it instantly. This is Mayorkas with Fox's Brett Baer last week. Brett was asked about the number of illegals that are being released into the country, and Mayorkas refused to give a clear answer, although he claimed he knew the data.
Would it surprise you to hear the CBP sources say that currently they are releasing more than 70% of the migrants crossing every day, and sometimes more than that number, higher than 70%? Would that surprise you?
It would not surprise me at all. I know the data. And I will tell you that when individuals are released, they are released into immigration enforcement proceedings.
Okay, so here he is making a claim that he's like, I know the data, but he refuses to tell us. What is that?
So that interview right there is what caused me to go down to the muster in Eagle Pass to ask him about that specific number, because every single Border Patrol agent, we all know that the numbers are at least 85%, at least. The only reason that we can't give you an exact number is because we don't control everything. ICE also has a piece to this, and ICE also releases a number of people, and we don't get to see that. So when I was in that muster, I told him exactly that. I believe the American people have a right to know exactly what is going on. And so because he had that data, he should have told Brett. It was his responsibility to tell Brett that, Brett, the number is much higher than 70. It's actually around 90%. It could be as high as 95%, given what's happening on any given day. But then we go beyond that. Look at what he said. They're put into immigration proceedings. That's what he did. So he's painting the picture that these people are actually being held accountable, and they're not. That was another false statement. He had a responsibility to tell Brett that, hey, when they're placed into immigration proceedings, what that means is they're being released into the United States, and the vast majority of these people aren't showing up to their court appearances, and they're absconding, and warrants are issued, and those warrants aren't being carried out. That was his responsibility. But he, first off, doesn't answer the 70%. He doesn't give the exact answer because he knows that he said that he knew the data. But then he also went a step further and painted a false picture for the American people. And that's what frustrates me the most. I don't care if you agree with me. You can disagree with me as much as you want. What I care about is that you're able to make your decision based upon all of the facts, not part of the facts.
Okay, so there's a couple of things that leap out to me about Alejandro Mayorkas. I'll list them real quickly for you, and you can respond to any of them. But One is he's compelling the Border Patrol to cut open the concertina wire that Texas is laying out to try and stop people from getting into the country. That's obviously an effort to help more foreign nationals get in rather than to stop them, despite what he might be saying. Two, he lied about the Border Patrol when it came to the horsewhipping scandal. He made that up. He straight up lied. He knew. He had. There's evidence, email evidence, that I believe the Heritage Foundation obtained through a Freedom of Information Act request that demonstrated Mayorkas knew that no Border Patrol agents were whipping illegal immigrants, and yet he slandered members of the Border Patrol anyway. If lying was good enough to impeach Bill Clinton, it's good enough to impeach Alejandro Mayorkas. And then, finally, he also said that if you're here in the country illegally, that is not a basis for deportation under his policies. Yep. I'm sorry, it is the law that you can be deported for being here illegally.
And that right there, I'm gonna touch on every single one of those, but that right there, the law, our laws, this is exactly what, I'm sorry, this is a paraphrase of what the law says, but I'm going to use one specific word. The law says that if you're in our country illegally, you shall be removed. That's what it says. It doesn't say you might be removed, you could be removed. It says you shall be removed. Yet if you look at the number of deportations that have taken place under this administration, it is a very, very small fraction of the total number of people that have crossed our borders illegally. So it's clear that the law is not being followed. And then, of course, when they leave, like what you just said, when the administration, if Mayorkas said that, I know that Biden said it, that he said that people, just the fact of being in our country illegally is not enough for us to go after you and remove you. That clearly shows that we're not following the law. And if we're not following the law, then I believe that is, in fact, a high crime or misdemeanor. Yeah. Then on top of it, you talk about the horse patrol. He did, in fact, know several hours before that the photographer said nobody was struck, nobody was whipped. Yet he went as far as inflaming the public by saying these images bring back the darkest days of our history. He equated those pictures to slavery, even though he knew that the agents didn't do anything wrong. So again, he's constantly only given a very small amount of information, and because the mainstream media doesn't call him upon it, that's all the American public has to go on when they're making decisions. That's wrong. And lying to the American people should be an impeachable offense.
And the last one was the concertina wire. He's making Border Patrol agents cut it open. Why is that?
Yeah. So again, that's just that's one of those. That's one of my biggest frustrations is we have to follow lawful orders. And if a lawful order is given, our agents have to follow it. So if they're told to go out and cut the concertina wire to take people into custody, then they have to do it. There's nothing unlawful. It's wrong. They shouldn't be given this order, but they do have to follow it as long as it's not unlawful. But when you look at that, there are so many other ways that he could go about that. We could walk them. I mean, it's not like we cut the wall when people cross into the border, because that wall's not built right on the border. That wall is given a 3-foot buffer. So when people are at the wall, they're actually in the United States, but we don't cut that. But they're making us cut what Texas is putting up, and that's just to thumb their nose at Texas officials like Governor Abbott.
But also, we keep hearing that Border Patrol, which of course it is stretched too thin. They don't have the capacity to handle the entire border right now, that there's too much processing going on. So wouldn't an administration that's interested in helping the Border Patrol welcome any effort to slow illegals from getting into the country?
They absolutely should. When you listen to Biden say, well, I'm trying to get more money. We don't need more money. We don't need more taxpayer. We don't need the taxpayer to foot this bill. What we need is President Biden to step to the plate and give us the proper policy. If he did that, we could secure the border tomorrow. And after policy, then we can evaluate what other technology, what other infrastructure, what other manpower do we need. He knows this, but he constantly wants to deflect. He constantly wants to put this issue on Congress when he has the executive authority tomorrow to do what he needs to do.
Can you tell me? I've asked a couple guests about this, and it seems that the summary here is that that the Biden administration moved illegal immigrants out of Eagle Pass, Texas, last week when Republican congressmen arrived. There were like 60-some Republican congressmen who showed up in Eagle Pass. What was happening behind the scenes before those Republican congressmen appeared?
So what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to go as far as saying that it was Biden that did this. What I will say is that the cartels are savvy enough to understand what our politics are here in the United States. And right before those congressmen went out there, right before that delegation of 60 went out there, Eagle Pass was the busiest station in the entire nation. They were apprehending upwards of 2,000 people every single day. The moment that it was announced that they were going out there, that number dropped. It spiked elsewhere, but it dropped right there. Then on top of that, just look at what happened when Secretary Mayorkas went out there. He was out there on Monday. The day before that, our apprehensions in Eagle Pass were right at 600. He goes out there, they got cut in half. It's not like border crossings were cut in half because those numbers just moved elsewhere, but right there in Eagle Pass. And what that does is that shows you the savvy of these cartels. It shows you how intelligent they are because they knew that all of the cameras were coming. They knew that the mainstream media had no choice but to cover this issue. So they just dropped the number of crossings in that area.
This is a super important point. I'm glad you're here to make it. Again, we're talking to Brandon Judd, the head of the Border Patrol Union. So from your perspective, you're not aware of any Border Patrol agents or maybe even ICE agents who were involved in moving human beings away from the site.
No.
It's the cartels that decided not to send people in for those days while the Republican congressman and subsequently Alejandro Mayorkas were there.
Yeah, no, this has nothing to do with Border Patrol agents. Now, do I believe, just through my 25 years experience, do I believe that our government is in contact with the Mexican government and saying, hey, this is going to look really bad for us if we have these huge numbers of crossings? Absolutely. We know that the Mexican government is extremely corrupt. We know that cartels have infiltrated the Mexican government. We recognize this. This is a reality that we live with every single day. So do I have any doubt that the Mexican government was involved in it? No, but it is ultimately the cartels. The cartels decide when, where, and how people are going to cross. And any time we send delegations out there, the cartels will move the people because they don't want the media coverage.
Finally, Brandon Judd, of course, it's called the Border Patrol. What % of the workforce is actually patrolling the border?
So unfortunately, the running joke right now is that we're not the Border Patrol anymore. We're the Welcome Patrol. That's the running joke. And it's very unfortunate because we want to go out. We want to do our job. We want to do what the American people expect us to do. We just can't do it because of this administration's policies. And that's what puts American citizens in danger, and it frustrates us every single day.
And when you met with Alejandro Mayorkas and talked with him, how icy was that conversation? He knows you want him to resign.
Well, I was in a room filled with around 70 Border Patrol agents, and so when I talked to him about the importance for democracy's sake of telling the American people what's out there, and I told him that we know that it's 85%. At that point, he said, "Yeah, it's higher than 85%." So it was one thing, but it's not like he can lie to the agents that are right there that know exactly what's going on.
Yeah, man. It's a wild time. Thank you for giving us a perspective on it. Brandon Judd, always good to talk to you, sir. Thank you very much.
Good to talk to you, too. Thank you.
That's Brandon Judd, head of the Border Patrol Union. I want to reflect on one piece of audio, though. We were talking before about Alejandro Mayorkas and how early in the Biden administration, right at the this was early 2022. This was early 2022, January of 2022. Alejandro Mayorkas made this announcement that being in the United States illegally is not a basis for deportation. Listen.
Unlawful presence in the United States will alone not be a basis for an immigration enforcement action.
In other words, you won't be deported. So what happened after that? Only the worst illegal immigration any of us have ever seen in this country. It's fine. Okay, as we speak, Christie doing a town hall in New Hampshire. Here he is live, dropping out of the presidential race.
And I promised my wife that I would never, ever do that again. And I'm not going to. So for all the people who have been in this race, who have put their own personal ambition ahead of what's right, they will ultimately have to answer the same questions that I had to answer after my decision in 2016. Those questions don't ever leave. In fact, they're really stubborn. They stay. And so I know how I'm answering those questions. I've never believed that Donald Trump was a foregone conclusion as our nominee in this race, and I knew that the case had to be made against him.
Remember, he joined the race as a kamikaze against Trump. What happens when a kamikaze doesn't hit its target?
The fact that he was going to be the nominee, resigned with the fact that the case didn't even need to be made because it would be a waste of time. They sat on the sidelines, and all they did was voice their opposition in private, behind closed doors, quietly, so no one could hear. And that's not leadership, everybody. That's cowardice. It's cowardice and it's hypocrisy. As a party, we need to be willing to take the responsibility for the part we've played in getting here. Our country is angry, it's divided, it's accomplishing little.
Okay. Well, this is drawn out. This is a little more drawn out than we expected, but who knows? He's a talker, so that's what's going on. But apparently he is dropping out of the race right now. So let me project forward what's going to happen in the next few minutes. He will, at some point, meander his way to announcing that he is dropping out of the race. Some reporting indicating he's not planning on making an endorsement here, but one would assume that the people who support him were likely to support Nikki Haley in New Hampshire. And then Bruce Springsteen music is likely to play at the end of this. That's what we know. Stay with us. Hey there, 5:35 now, WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. You can join us today, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Couple of career changes to report to you. The winningest coach in college football history, Nick Saban, who's won the most titles, is retiring. That's all coming out right now. University of Alabama head coach. He's hanging it up, apparently. And Christie, you heard just moments ago, dropping out of the 2024 presidential race with a kind of a bitter speech in New Hampshire. He's upset. He says not enough people are telling the truth about Trump. If they want to say it at all, they'll say it behind closed doors. They can't be honest. And then he's lambasting anybody who has ambition, and if it bleeds over into their policy and decision-making, it's okay to have personal ambition, he says, but once it affects your decision-making, it's bad. Well, I don't know. I mean, in politics, we judge politicians by their successes, and then we reward them with votes, right? That's how it used to be done. So paying attention to what people want is actually a good way to govern, of course. You should be disciplined and all sorts of things. And do we have criticisms of Trump? I think everybody I know who loves Trump has some sort of criticism about him. Nobody's perfect. That's what makes us human, for sure. But boy, I much prefer the Trump era over the Biden era, don't you? So Christie today is dropping out of the race in a very long-winded speech. And just before he came out to give his remarks, apparently he was yammering. I think this is with reporters, but it was caught on hot mic. The reporting I'm seeing is he's not endorsing Nikki Haley today, and the audio I'm about to play for you, it will be really an indication as to why. He thinks Nikki Haley is a disaster, and he was not saying this on stage. He was saying this to, it sounds like people who he didn't realize were recording his words. If he was speaking to reporters, he should have assumed that. Bill Malugin tweeting the breaking news audio here, saying that he was caught on hot mic. Take a listen to Christie's remarks. This is just moments ago, all just shared. Let me see. I've got to make sure that Christie's remarks, his live remarks, are muted so you can hear Bill Malugin's hot mic version of events.
And let's not forget she spent $68 million.
Yeah.
I mean, we spent like
when you give land to China and places like that.
Yeah, that's what you get. Yeah. I mean, look, she spent $68 million so far, just on TV. Spent $68 million so far, $59 million by DeSantis, and we spent 12. I mean, who's punching above their weight and who's getting a return on their investment,
Wait, did you hear that? Chris Christie said he was punching above his weight. That's quite a feat. He's saying, I only spent $12 million on TV. I'm punching way above my weight.
And who's getting a return on their investment, And she's going to get smoked. And you and I both know it. She's not up to this.
Wait, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt too much of that, but he says she's going to get smoked. You and I both know it. She is not up to this.
Spent 12. I I mean, who's punching above their weight and who's getting a return on their investment, you know? And she's going to get smoked. And you and I both know it. She's not up to this.
She hasn't even been
And she's still 20 points behind Trump in New Hampshire, right?
Yeah.
And,
Oh, yeah.
And he's still going to carry Iowa, right?
Yes. Oh, I talked to DeSantis called me, petrified that I would.
He's probably getting out after Iowa.
Well,
He's petrified. So the audio cuts out there. So let's take a wild guess as to what Christie is saying there. My assumption is that DeSantis was concerned. Christie used the word petrified, that he was going to do something. I think that means endorse Nikki Haley. Well, apparently he's not. He thinks she's a disaster. She's going to, quote, get smoked. You and I both know it. She's not up to this. Now, the people who were standing next to him, these reporters, I think, who were talking to him, also said, well, wait a second, Trump's 20 points ahead in New Hampshire. He's like set to win. And he goes, yeah, of course, says Christie. And then they also said, but he's also going to win Iowa. Oh, yeah. You heard him say. It's just casually out of hand. Like, yeah, he's going to win both of those places. Now, we'll see. We'll see if he does. The candidates, certainly DeSantis has placed all of his eggs in Iowa. And meanwhile, Christie and Nikki Haley have been all in on New Hampshire. So we'll see what the rest of this race looks like. But it is true. It is true. Trump is way ahead. And Nikki Haley is spending money like crazy to get every possible vote she can. And Christie says she's going to get smoked. You and I both know it. She's not up to this. Now, Christie, I want to go back to this concept that Christie was just talking a second ago about how you need to care more about the country than yourself is basically the speech. And Donald Trump isn't like that, and he's too egocentric, and on and on. But think about Christie's presence in this campaign and who he's been over these last few years, especially ever since he turned against Trump. He has been incapable of calling out the tyranny of the federal government. He stands on those debate stages. He's got a lot to say about Trump, a lot, but almost nothing to say about Biden. Almost nothing at all, actually, to say about the abuses of the United States Department of Justice, about the arrest of Biden's political opponents, about the imprisonment of the January 6 detainees, about how the Democrat prosecutors across the country are going after Trump and trying to destroy him clearly on a political mission and not in any sense as dispassionate overseers of justice. It is completely tyrannical. And Chris Christie, to the extent that he has any involvement in this, is refusing to speak up against it and was the guy who recommended to Trump, who made the mistake of listening to him, the hiring of Christopher Wray as the head of the FBI. So all of this, nonsense about, like, you got to care more about the country. Have you opened your eyes to what's happening in your country right now? Can you, for a moment, spare a syllable for the tyranny that's taking place, against the tyranny that's taking place? So, the guy likes to talk about egos. Man, he's got one of the biggest in the room. Chris Christie. And he's still kind of jonesing for the golden years that he had. Remember when he was giving it to the teachers' unions in New Jersey? And conservatives loved it. They loved saying it because he was fighting back. He was cutting spending. He was forging deals. People thought that he had a real opportunity. He did. He did have a real opportunity. Back in 2012, he turned down his opportunity at that point to run for president. A lot of the grand poobahs in the Republican Party were urging him, run, run, run. And he was like, no, not ready yet, not ready. Well, his chance came and went. And so Mitt Romney gets the nomination, and that ended up being a complete disaster. He would later become a United States Senator. And Christie missed his chance. And so by the time 2016 rolls around, Mr. Straight Talk Express is not there anymore. That's not, nobody, like, so he's going to stand up on that stage and he's going to be more frank and more plain-spoken than Donald Trump. Not going to happen. It just didn't happen. You saw it on that stage. He came across like a politician. Trump came across as a guy who was ticked off at Washington. And so people went with the guy who was ticked off at Washington. And Christie can't really summon that feeling. He's not ticked off at Washington. He loves the people of Washington. He loves the ABC News green room and hanging out on set with George Stephanopoulos and Stephanopoulos. Snuffleupagus. That's what he loves. That's his world. That's okay. Go do that. He wants to get into the radio business, actually. At one point, he was doing sports talk radio. That's what he wants to be. Go do that. Go do that. So Chris Christie dropping out today. Now, on this point about how the federal government and these Democrat prosecutors across the country are tyrants, how much more evidence do we need? You know? This week, we've got a report on what's happening with big fat Fanni Willis down in Georgia, the Fulton County district attorney. I don't know if she's actually fat. I've seen her photos, but I just like saying big fat Fanni. But big fat Fanni Willis, she's got this lover. What is it with all these Democrats? She's got this guy who was cheating on his wife, who started, engaging in some hanky-panky with Miss Fanni. And it turns out that's a very lucrative job, to cheat on your wife with Fanni Willis, because this guy he became a special prosecutor working on Fanni Willis's team to go after Trump in this RICO case in Georgia, like Trump's a member of the mob or something. And so Byron York has a great summary of this today. He says it's a wild story, and it certainly is. Trump co-defendant alleges Georgia prosecutor corruption. At this stage of things, most of the developments in the criminal cases against former President Trump involve this appeal or this hearing date or that hearing date. But in Fulton County, Georgia, where the elected Democrat district attorney Fanni Willis has brought a massive RICO case against Trump and 18 other defendants, something truly wild is happening. One of the defendants in the case is a man named Michael Roman. He worked for Trump in 2020, part of the campaign, and he filed a motion to dismiss the charges against him. Roman alleges that Willis abused her authority by appointing her boyfriend, her paramour, her lover, these are my words, Nathan Wade, to be the special prosecutor in the Trump case. Then paid Wade an excessive amount, and then Wade used some of that money to pay for vacations and other high living together with Willis. This is typical for Democrat officials, by the way. They take your money and spend it for their own pleasure. Roman wants the charges against him dropped because he alleges that Willis did not complete the process required to appoint Wade as special prosecutor in the first place. Roman also wants Willis removed from the case on the grounds that the district attorney and the special prosecutor have been engaged in an improper, clandestine, personal relationship during the pendency of this case, which has resulted in the special prosecutor, and in turn the district attorney, profiting significantly from this prosecution at the expense of taxpayers. All right, let's go through the numbers here just so you know how much money we're talking about. This guy, Wade, the boy mistress in this story, has made $653,881 of Georgia taxpayer money to destroy Trump. That is just in the last 2 years. So as of December 23, nearly $700,000 this guy has taken from the taxpayers. For her part, big fat Fanni Willis makes about $200,000 a year. So just over these last 2 years, the couple has made about $1 million off of Georgia taxpayers going after Trump, spending every waking moment either on vacation or trying to destroy Donald Trump. And their vacations apparently have been pretty fabulous. They've traveled personally together to places like Napa Valley, California, Florida, the Caribbean. Wade has purchased tickets for both of them to travel on both the Norwegian and Royal Caribbean cruise lines. Wade also purchased hotel rooms for personal trips with funds from the same account used to receive the payments under his contract with Willis. The district attorney and the special prosecutor have been seen in private together in and about the Atlanta area and believed to have cohabitated in some form or fashion at a location that is owned by neither of them. Interesting. So that's all coming out this week. And here's one more thing that Byron York points out that is super interesting and gets right to the election meddling that's going on at the direction of the Biden White House. This guy, Wade, is apparently welcome at the Biden White House and has spent some time visiting there. There's one billing note. He billed for his time visiting with Biden's officials. Conference with White House counsel. That was on May 23rd of 2022. Conference with White House counsel. And another for interview with D.C./White House on November 18th of 2022. So here you have the Fulton County District Attorney's overpaid boyfriend special counsel going and coordinating with the Biden White House on multiple occasions, written down in his billing. He's billing for the time that he traveled to go and do that. And if you've been paying attention, you know that's not the first time we've heard something like this. In fact, it's happened pretty routinely. The New York Attorney General, Letitia James, the one who's suing Trump for defrauding banks that claim they weren't defrauded, they're perfectly happy with Trump's time with them. But she's like, oh, you don't know what had happened to you. You don't. I know better than you, says Letitia James. Letitia James ran for office in New York on the idea that she would destroy Donald Trump, and now she's doing everything she can to do that. Letitia James visited the Biden White House in April of 2022, August of 2023, and July of 2023, according to White House visitor logs just made published today. You can see it today on the Twitter account of Kanikoa the Great, who posted all of the screenshots of these White House visitor logs that are just out, showing Letitia James has been a routine visitor to the Biden White House. No coordination there. She was just there for the Christmas tree tour. And remember, her visits happened both before and after she announced a $250 million lawsuit against Donald Trump. What else? Oh, well, there's Jack Smith, of course, the Biden stooge who's looking to destroy Donald Trump, the one with a horrific track record before the Supreme Court. He was struck down 9-0 in prior cases against Bob McDonnell in Virginia. White House officials met with Jack Smith's aides before Donald Trump was charged. The New York Post reported in August of 2023, Biden staffers met with the special counsel, Jack Smith's aides, before Trump indictment, just weeks before he brought those charges against former President Trump for allegedly mishandling classified documents. The name of the guy? Jay Bratt, who joined the special counsel team in November of 2022, shortly after it was formed, took a meeting in the White House on March 31st of 2023 with Caroline Saba, the deputy chief of staff for the White House counsel's office, according to White House visitor logs. They were joined in the 10 a.m. meeting by Danielle Ray, an FBI agent in the Washington field office. And 9 weeks later, Trump was indicted by Smith's office. Okay, how much more intersecting do we need? The Biden White House appears to have a controlling stake in all of these attorneys, these left-wing prosecutors across the country, misusing, abusing, corrupting their jobs to meddle in our election system. Christie doesn't have a word to say about that, but he is dropping out of the race today, so we'll hear less from him. You know that Christie hot mic audio that I played for you? I was concerned. I thought maybe it was a reporter who captured it. It was Christie's own audio feed that captured it. It was being broadcast on his official website where he said that Nikki Haley's going to get smoked. Yep. Christie did it to himself. Oh, boy. Oh, here's something funny. Congresswoman Jayapal today about Donald Trump.
Well, I appreciate the passion from my friend across the aisle and the outrage. I think we're all outraged about many things. But if we're going to talk about outrageous things that have happened or things that have never happened, let's talk about the fact that President Trump incited an insurrection.
What was that? She's not the first to do that. A lot of them have.
Into inciting an insurrection.
They feel if a president has incited an insurrection.
For inciting the insurrection.
Incited the insurrection.
Someone who just incited an insurrection.
Did incite an insurrection on the Capitol.
They can't stop themselves, can they? Guess what's popping up now? The great one, Mark Levin, up here on WMAL.